The air was abuzz with the barely contained excitement and eager enthusiasm as the crewmen, soldiers, and other members of the ship's staff moved about their duties. Being the lead vessel in Flotilla 7, our ship served as the point of the spear for whatever operation the Imperial Council directed us to complete, and as such was often busy with the affairs of the fleet itself as much as the business of completing orders. Things had been quite a bit more hectic as of late, with the full expansion of the flotilla to include 3 slightly smaller versions of our lead ship, as well as the requisite number of smaller support and logistical craft, and of course the vast numbers of men and material for such expansionist demands, bringing the flotilla to nearly 3 times its original size. The past 3 months have been spent bringing all these elements into sync with each other, and bringing the formation to a proper, ready state for operations. Today, we set out on our first deployment. And, despite all the excitement at this fact, no one knows what our orders are. Gossip says the Admiral was given the Council's directives personally, and whatever they are, he has not spoken to anyone about them, merely spending the last week drilling and ensuring all were ready for the upcoming challenges that were sure to face us. Nearly 1 billion of my fellow Orc-kin, along with goblins, scale-blessed, and others, all ready to travel the stars and bring the might and protection of the Empire to any who would ask of it. Our vessels number in the dozens and could patrol and defend an entire star system with no gaps. Our lead ship and the 3 secondary command ships are thousands of miles in length, armed and equipped for any level of operation. And our men are the finest in the Empire, and the greater realms for that matter. No matter where we will deploy, the Orc-kin of the Empire would make sure that none doubted our might or authority, as we had claimed and settled the bulk of the cluster long before the home realm, as they like to style themselves, chose to make themselves known again. And we would reclaim those systems and worlds that still had connections to the Empire before the interference of the home realm and their gods. For the Empire had endured the long years before their coming, and would endure long after their eventual fall. By the 9 and 4, welcome to the library. I am the recorder, and in this entry, we're going to take a quick look at the Orc-kin of the realms in general, and of the ancient empire in specific. Regular visitors to the library, as well as my perceptive patrons, will be aware that this will be just a quick look at the various kinds of Orc-kin, with more in-depth entries to come in future. Beginning with the origin of the species, Orc-kin as a base find their genesis in the Age of Ascension in the beginning times of the realms. At this time, they were barely evolved to intelligence, presumably having done so during the latter years of the previous age. The interest of the dragons at this time sees the species undergo a period of organization and refinement, as the three commonly recognized subspecies of the Orc-kin become distinct, while also seeing the goblin line split from the common base line. Goblins from this point forward are their own people, and as such will get an entry of their own, along with the other race to appear at this point and in these circles, that of the Scale-Blessed. Sticking with the subject of her entry, the three common forms of Orc-kin are the baseline Orc, the Orc-lin, and the Orc-tan. Each complements the others in abilities and capabilities, as well as helping to offset any shortcomings that may be present. Within the base tribal structure of wild or unenlightened orcs, these three groups work together for the betterment of the tribe, most often by the raiding and looting of other nearby and weaker peoples, caravans, and other settlements. Across most of the realms, this is the case, as the Orc-kin saw their numbers spread far and wide during the original travels of the Expeditus fleet. With the exception of the ancient empire though, most of these Orc-kin are still in a savage and unenlightened state, relying on the brute of their race to see them rise to the top of their local regions, or be extinguished. Only in the Empire do we see a fully developed culture and society among the Orc-kin, and while it is one dominated by contests of power and authority amongst its members, they have strict codes of personal and tribal honor to regulate and focus this natural aggression to make it a part of wider society. Starting with baseline orcs, they are about the same size as a human, upwards of 20% larger than a normal man though. They are stronger and tougher as well. While not as dexterous or clever as your normal human, they are far more hardy overall, with better endurance and a wider available selections for food and nutrition, as many things poisonous or toxic are just too weak to affect them. Orcs of this type are the majority of the species, making up a solid 40 to 50% of their greater number, and are the most commonly seen by outsiders. Orc-lins are a bit smaller, closer to a smaller human adult, but not an adolescent. They have, in fine motor control and wit, what they lack in strength and endurance of their larger cousins, and as such, they tend to fill the roles of experts, whether crafters, farmers, or administrators. They also have a larger proportion of the magically gifted amongst their ranks. From these places they guide their fellow Orc-kin to great deeds of war, as well as construction, or any other challenges that requires a more complex answer than bash it to pieces, and thus are vital to the greater tribe's growth and continuance. They also find great use in diplomatic or business affairs, winning via the pen that which the sword is not able to gain. Orc-tan are the opposite of Orc-lins, being stronger, bigger, but even more dull mentally than a normal orc. Upwards of 10 feet tall and with the might to match, Orc-kin are mountains of flesh and muscle. Often no more mentally advanced than most adolescents in other races, they have a wholesome naivete to their simple nature. Despite this, they have an instinctual understanding of combat and how to execute it, allowing them to serve as excellent shock troops or in many other heavy-hitting roles. Under the guidance of an Orc-lin, however, this changes, with them able to follow complex instructions accurately so long as the Orc-lin is nearby to keep them on task. Under the direction of an Orc-lin, an Orc-kin can even complete rather intricate works of construction, as well as other tasks that would be beyond them otherwise. How exactly this connection functions is not quite understood, and is thought to be a gift developed or given to them by the dragons during their touch on their race's history in the far past. The fact that the Orc-kin of the Empire are so far beyond their counterparts in the greater realms does much to show what the species could be if they were allowed to rise to that level. However, their nature as natural aggressors makes this situation relatively unlikely to arrive, as it is extremely common for various groups, individuals, or other power blocks to use Orc-kin as pawns on the Great Board, using them as distraction, cheap troops, or in other ways that ensure their reputations as being barely less than monsters is one that endures for some time to come. Ending on that somewhat dour note, I hope you have a better understanding now of the Orc-kin and their variants, and how they're able to work together to achieve their aims, as well as a bit of the difference between the orcs of the Empire and of the greater realms. With all that said, I want to thank you, my regular visitors and perceptive patrons of the library, for your interest, your time, and your support. As always, it means the realms to me. Thank you. Now, until you next make your way back to the library for another entry, by the 9 and 4, be well, take care of yourselves and each other. If you'd like to contribute to the further exploration and explanation of the realms, please consider leaving a comment, a like, and sharing the video around. I read all the comments and make efforts to reply to each. Thank you for helping to grow the channel, and know I look forward to each and every one of your comments. Other methods of support can be found in the channel's description. Thank you for watching.